Good afternoon. This is Dr. Thomas, Social Work 505, and we are now in week 6. So, as always, the overview introduction for week 6 is as follows. This week's unit covers working with families. So, we're going to look at some of the theoretical framework for engaging in families. We will explore assumptions about working with families, as well as how trauma can impact that system. So you will be revisiting the Sanchez family. Apparently this is a case you were introduced to in Social Work 501, to practice engagement and assessment. And finally, you will be learning about genograms and ecomaps as tools for family assessment. So the next thing you will look at is the week 6 introductory video. And let's now look at learning resources for the week. So the readings for the week are as follows. In John Pullen, 2010, Strengths-Based Generalist Practice, you're going to be looking at Chapter 7, Generalist Practice with Families, so you would get to that reading by clicking on this link. In the text for the class, in Schulman, 2016, The Skills of Helping Individuals, Families, Groups, and Communities, you're going to look at Chapter 7, which is Preliminary and Beginning Phases in Family Practice, and then Chapter 8, which is the Middle and Ending Phase. The activities for this week are as follows. So here's your discussion on the Sanchez family. This week, you'll revisit the Sanchez family case file that you were introduced to in 501. The focus is on family assessment and engagement. You will be exploring and reading through the resources under this website, New Directions in Social Work Series website. So, you're going to look at the introduction, and then engage and discover and to assess the situation, and then look at the case file, the echo map, the interaction matrix, the town map, and then critical thinking questions. And actually, I have that website up on the screen. So this is that website. So where it says hover over engage, you'll hover over number 1. Hover over assess, you'll hover over number 2, and then for the different members of the family, you will click on, for example, Celia Sanchez, and it should give you the echo map, the critical thinking questions, and then you can look at her client history, her concerns, goals, and critical questions to consider. So you're going to be reading the case files of each of the members of the Sanchez family. So you're going to do that for both under engage and discover, and then under assess the situation. So for the first part of your post, you're going to choose one member of the Sanchez family. So excuse the fact that I said read all the members. You're going to look at one member of the Sanchez family and respond to each of that family's critical thinking questions. Make sure that you state which family member you've chosen and number each of your answers to show which questions you're responding to. And then for the second part of your initial post, you will choose one of the lenses and respond to the questions at the end of the lens description. Make sure you state which lens you've chosen and number each of your answers to show which questions you're responding to. And you are going to respond to at least one of your classmates. So let's go to the second requirement for this week. The second requirement for this week is that you have to find a video of a family session, preferably an initial one, in which you review and critique the worker's use of techniques of contracting with the family. Be sure to address topics as discussed in the Schulman chapters this week, such as clarifying purpose, clarifying the worker's role, reaching for feedback, addressing authority issues, etc. And also talk about diversity issues that you see in your video that you have selected. Again, in terms of response, view at least one other member of your class's video that they've chosen and provide constructive feedback to them, incorporating specific references to the course readings. Describe what the worker did well and things they could improve. So that is the requirement for this week. I believe it is just the 2 posts, and then we are into, I believe, week 7. So I have put together a short PowerPoint to talk about some of the issues that were addressed in the readings this week, but as always, please, please, please make sure that you, in fact, let's see if it's better shown with the slideshow, that you, in fact, do the reading, because the PowerPoint will only go over some particular points, not all points. So let's do it this way. And I think it is better not in the slideshow view. So the readings talked about definition of family. And one of the readings, I believe the Pullen reading, listed many, 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 many variations of family. So it's a myth that the definition of family is a husband, and the husband being a man, and a wife, and the wife being a woman, and 1 or 2 children. Reality is that there are many types of families, and no one definition fits all. Families, we've moved from looking at families as being interdependent and families being seen as a collective and providing mutual assistance, to the view that we hold often in United States culture about individualism. So, mutual assistance was the expectation for families in the early days of the country. The settlement house movement also encouraged mutual assistance. Collectivism is a norm for many families and communities of color. If one succeeds, all succeed. If one fails, all are seen as having some failure. And people work together so that all will succeed. Gradual change in social work and social work code of ethics pushed us towards this idea of the individual and the rights of the individual and self-determination versus collectivism. So understand that in terms of working cross-culturally, when families and family decisions are dominant over individual decisions, that sometimes our work as social workers and our values and our ethics conflict with those of people in other cultures. In the early days of psychoanalytic theory, we talked about families in terms of a deficit model. So if families couldn't manage on their own, there must be something wrong with them. The worker's role was to figure out what was wrong with the family and tell them what they needed to do. Professionals assess what is wrong, diagnose the problem, and prescribe the services. And that is often done in the form of a treatment plan or service plan that the worker creates for the family versus with the family. And if the family doesn't follow that advice or plan, or if the plan doesn't work, it has to be the family's fault. They are then labeled non-compliant or unmotivated. So when you are talking about families or individuals and you find yourself using words like non-compliant or unmotivated, it's better not to label. It's better to describe the behavior. And sometimes you will find that what we're labeling non-compliant or unmotivated just means that we have people who disagree with our way of thinking, and we are working with them, not against them. And so maybe they have some legitimate concerns as to why they disagree with the course of action that we think they should follow. The appropriate professional action in the case of the deficit model then is to withdraw services, or in the child welfare system, it is to take custody of the child. A strengths perspective or an asset-based approach refers to helping family members identify their inherent strengths, their resiliency, their resources, their talents, their cultural values, their desires and aspirations, and use these to create a plan to reach their goals. So we are developing and working on plans with families. Family involvement, or seeing families as full partners, and being culturally aware through understanding our own family experience and being able to relate to the family experiences of others, but also understanding that our families are not their families, and we cannot compare and say what other families should and should not do. Assessment of a family system can include 6 major family subsystems: the structure, authority, and relationship patterns and subsystems in a family; the life cycle stage, family additions or losses or transitions; issues of ethnicity and culture, how the family communicates; the emotional climate; and boundaries, which are those invisible barriers between individual family members, family subsystems, and larger systems that regulate interactions. In the readings, there was discussion about 3 family boundary types. One is an open family, that there's a great deal of interaction with people outside the family. One is a closed family system that has a lack of interaction with the external environment. Then there's random family systems. There are no boundary patterns. Each develops his or her own type of interaction pattern with the external environment. So again, individual-centered versus family-centered. Individuals originate in family systems. So even if we're just seeing someone on an individual basis, be mindful that they come from a family which may or may not be influencing the decisions that the individual is making. Systems theory and person and environment perspective are 2 approaches to take into consideration when working with families. Some theoretical frameworks for family work, and this is definitely not all-inclusive. This is a very, very, very small beginning list, is a psychodynamic approach. And so psychodynamic approach looks at historical influences on families. So families often come to a social worker at a time of crisis. The worker then is developing or identifying, unhelpful patterns and roles, like someone in the group being a scapegoat or the victim or the persecutor, etc. And the worker provides support, controls emotional interactions, and presents a positive model of interpersonal interactions. Bowen family systems theory, Bowenian theory, postulates that the family is guided by an emotional system that has been developed over many years. There is also intergenerational contributions to this emotional system, which is why looking at a genogram is important. key concept is the importance of individuals being able to differentiate between emotional and thinking systems in order to achieve control over behaviors. A person-centered approach has the worker establishing healthy psychological climate in order to facilitate good communication patterns, and focuses on core helping skills of the worker like genuineness and positive regard for families and being willing to listen. Cognitive behavioral family therapy focuses on more of the present versus the psychodynamic theoretical framework. Problems serve some function in the family, and negative behavior may result from unrealistic expectations and the behaviors of others versus the behaviors themselves. To continue around cognitive behavioral family therapy, it defines the primary conflict, describes a negative interaction pattern, seeks to decrease blaming and increase vulnerability, addresses other beliefs about significant others, teaches support and empathy for each partner in the relationship, and uses behavioral contracting, i.e., what can each member do for the other. A multi-systemic therapeutic approach was originally developed to work with youth and adolescents who were in the criminal justice system and using substances. Begins with linking goals of the larger system that is caring for that youth, a home-based treatment model that focuses on developing a trusted relationship between the family members and the therapist, and also works on the identification of goals, action steps, and strengths. So in terms of a beginning phrase and contracting, we're clarifying the purpose, clarifying the worker's role, reaching for feedback, and addressing issues like authority. In that middle and ending phases, we're dealing with process issues between members of the family, determines achievement of goals and objectives, and determines whether progress can be sustained. And here are the references that were used in terms of putting together this PowerPoint. So that is week 6. I look forward to reading your discussion posts for this week. And as always, if you have any questions, please email me as quickly as possible, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. We are fast coming up to the end of the semester, so please try to stay abreast of all your assignments because there is a short window once week 7 ends for grades to be given. So again, I look forward to reading your post and have a wonderful, wonderful week.